As a few of our more vocal critics are eager to tell anyone who will listen, nobody at this channel started their career in the automotive industry. Nobody here started their career as a journalist. And in a world where it's become trendy to try and discredit people you disagree with, not with hard, provable facts to counter what they're actually saying, but instead by making ad hominem attacks on someone's personality, identity, or background, I'm sure that by now most of you know that I started my working life as a professional musician and music teacher. Kate started off her professional career as a biochemist, then a technical writer, and then, well, a rather long list of jobs. Who says she has ADHD? And she wrote that last bit in the script, not me. But then I also do have spicy brain, so I totally get it. Erin is the only person on the team whose training, animation and media, is anywhere near what she actually does here. And our DP? Well, prior to becoming our camera guru, they worked as a machinist for a large multinational manufacturing company that focuses on the oil and gas industry. Personally, though, I have always had an affinity with the news, TV and radio. In fact, when I was a pimply teen, I used to give up my Saturday afternoons to volunteer at BBC Radio Norfolk, where I learned how to erase the carts used for jingles and pre-recorded promotions. I learned how to navigate the teletext and wire service feed computers, which, by the way, were ancient, temperamental, and half the time broken. I learned how to do my overmodulated radio voice, and I learned how to splice reel-to-reel tapes together. Throughout high school and university, I dabbled with the art of radio, and since I attended the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, I also picked up my fair share of camera skills from fellow students on the drama track. I was on the music track. In 2005, after a life-changing surgery complication led to a doctor recommending I take a small break from playing music professionally, my nerdy enthusiasm for Apple Macs allowed me to pick up a job as disc editor for Mac Format magazine. Granted, it was a reasonably short stint before I returned to music, but it was a stint that taught me a lot about the magazine publishing industry. All in all, though, music was my main career until about 2009, when my love for EVs, which I had been driving since about 2006, led me to land a job as a contributing writer specialising in EVs for a website called GreenCarReports. And today, nearly 15 years later, I'm having to say goodbye. Before you get either overly excited or overly sad, I should probably clarify that this channel, Transport Evolved, is, for now, not going anywhere. And I say for now because we never know what the future holds. It's like the reason I decided to call this channel Transport Evolved rather than EVs are awesome or something similar, because nobody can predict the future. Perhaps the US will suddenly build out sustainable, walkable urban areas like the Senac False Creek First Nations project is attempting to do in Vancouver, BC, and maybe we'll get to see high-speed rail, like my third home country has planned for Quebec City and Toronto. And then we can talk about trains. And yes, that was a subtle reference to the fact that I do now have triple citizenship and papers to prove it. No, today's video isn't me saying goodbye to you all, but instead the whole team here at the channel saying goodbye to a group of automotive websites whose kind nurturing allowed me to build the career I have today. Over the weekend, I learned from several former colleagues at GreenCarReports, TheCarConnection and MotorAuthority, 3 different sibling sites that are originally part of High Gear Media, which was then acquired by Internet Brands, that next week, on April 1st, those sites will officially close. They're the latest news sites to shut up shop in a frustratingly long list of sites and YouTube channels in the automotive industry who are, for reasons I'm going to surmise in a bit, calling it quits. So, today, I'd like to reminisce a little, explain why this particular media group was so formative in my career as an automotive journalist, and give some thoughts as to why I think this is happening. At the end, most importantly, I'm going to ask, where do we go from here? Sorry, and while I'm not wearing my stylish yet affordable boots like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a little bit of me has died as a result of this news happening. And yeah, because I admitted to owning a score of Dr. Horrible a short while back, I should probably also admit to owning a copy of the score of Buffy the Vampire Slayer the musical. And yes, I can sing all of the parts at pitch. It's a party trick I've been doing in cars for a long time. Don't ask. To start this video off, let's look at my history with High Gear Media and how I got into working for them as one of their EV contributing writers. Back in 2006, when I started getting involved in the EV world, I joined into all sorts of EV forums and groups and ended up being lucky enough to meet the lovely Chelsea Sexton. Through my short stint with the EV Cast, which was prior to me starting Transport Evolved as a podcast in 2009, I had the chance to talk to and interview Chelsea a few times. And sometime around 2009, after I opined to her about making a switch in careers from music to journalism, she told me that there was someone coming to London that she thought I should make an effort to meet up with because, in her words, you'll have a lot in common. So, on her recommendation, I jumped on a very early train one morning from Bristol Parkway, took it all the way to Paddington Station in London, and I had breakfast with a lovely gent from the US East Coast by the name of John Volker. It's him behind me. He was the then editor-in-chief of GreenCarReports, and we spent several hours chatting about all sorts of things, including EVs. And I also learned that John, who as a child had spent a significant amount of time in the UK, had a bit of a soft spot for Morris Minors. In fact, when he was a child in the UK, his father purchased a left-hand drive Morris Minor and had it shipped back to the US when they left. And it's a car that John, to this day, still owns and drives. And as you probably know, both Kate Walton Elliott and I also have a very soft spot for Morris Minors. Shortly after that meeting, John reached out and offered me a position as a contributing writer at GreenCarReports, and I jumped at the chance. And there began my official transition from music teacher to professional journalist. I wasn't the only Brit working for the company, and I joined an amazing group of automotive journalists whose breadth of knowledge and insider information was immense. I learned a lot during my time at the company, focusing primarily on EV stories and occasionally dipping out to write stories or articles for other High Gear Media sites. It was through my job at High Gear Media that I was given the chance to go to the Arctic Circle to drive Volvo electric cars at the top of the world. It was through High Gear Media that I was able to head to Israel in 2012 to see Better Places battery swap stations in operation. It was through High Gear Media that I was able to head to the US and cover the opening of Tesla's first mass production facility in Fremont, California, where we learned about supercharging for the very first time. In fact, that was a story I remember dashing back to my hotel room to write before hitting publish and getting the rush of being the first to cover a breaking story. Frankly, I have lots of amazingly fond memories. And on the rare occasions today when this channel gets invited to an event that a former colleague happens to be at, we pick up conversations where we left them the last time we were there. High Gear introduced me to a bunch of industry insiders that I still talk to today. And It let me, a neuro-spicy, nervous introvert who sucks at real-world interactions, develop my own inner voice and style. It was uniquely my own. I left High Gear Media officially in 2012, 2013 after I was headhunted and offered a PR job for a UK-based EV charity, a role which I thought looked great on paper and would enjoy, but which in practice didn't make my brain chemistry fire in the right way. And after a short stint there, I returned to writing, this time as a freelancer, where I contributed to several different websites, including GreenCarReports. Then I decided to turn Transport Evolved's weekend news panel podcast into a full-time career, turning Transport Evolved into a text-based news site before then morphing it into the video-only content that you see today, sometime around 2015. And up to the point in 2015 when I emigrated from the UK to the US and our news podcast was quietly cancelled, my former editor John Volker and many of my other friends and colleagues from those early days of automotive journalism were regular guests on our weekend live show. I may no longer write stories, but I do write scripts, and every single piece of advice and mentorship I received at High Gear holds true today. There are few days that I don't ask myself what John or Marty or one of the other editorial team would say about a particular phrase or passage, and I cringe when my inner voice tells me I have buried the lead too much, something I have a penchant for doing, Rachel Maddow style. But on April 1st, a day that is important to me for other reasons that may or may not relate to a Monty Python song about appendages and my emphatic response of no, all of the sites that helped me grow as a writer are going dark. No more articles. And the folks there are cast out to find their own way in the increasingly bleak space of today's online news world. Now you know my backstory and why these sites, played an important role in getting me here to this point. Let's ask the why. And because I know people will comment, I want to be explicitly clear here that my expectation is, like so many other news sites of similar ilk, the reason is money. Just like most other car sites and YouTube channels of late that have closed up shop, High Gear Media was founded with help from venture capitalists. Venture capitalists put money down to help the new company get off the ground, but ultimately, like every venture capitalist, they want their money back, usually after a company has been acquired or floated on the stock market. And I'm going to surmise that when High Gear was sold to internet brands, those original investors got their money back. But like oh so many companies out there, and I'm not going to repeat the story because it's been told so many times of late, after acquisition, things change. Editorial priorities sometimes change. The pressure to bring in new revenue and be a leader for some other property, often a sales site, also rises. And in the case of these sites, their current owner, Internet Brands, also happens to own Cars Direct. So I don't think I need to join those particular dots for you. As far as I'm concerned, the team at these soon-to-shut sites have continued to produce excellent content right up until the closure was announced, and from what I can tell, they are planning on continuing to do so this week until April 1st. But through discussion with other journalists in the field and knowing the stories of other sites facing similar sudden closures, I think it's likely the current owners just didn't see the value in what those sites were doing, only a drain on their bottom line. Now, the Internet Archive does amazing work preserving our online heritage, but the loss of these news sites, the accompanying disappearance of that information from search engines, well, I think it's a devastation for charting the history of our transition to a cleaner future, and it's also frustrating for sites like us who want to provide context and depth to stories and link back to other good articles we know on topics. While we may know something, finding a source to verify a piece of history becomes exponentially harder as these sites disappear and the void is filled with AI-generated craft. And again, to be absolutely clear, What I'm saying here are my thoughts, nobody else's, and I am speculating on the factors that have caused these closures based on what I know of the industry, which is based on my own experiences and based on conversations I've had with others in the same space. I haven't spoken to any of the team directly at this company about the closures because that would put them in a difficult position. So first, let's be honest as to the reasons. Ever since COVID, new cars have been considered a luxury that many people just simply cannot afford. Home rental prices have soared since COVID, while wages for anyone not in the 1% have barely kept up. The cost of living has gone up, and under our new US president have begun to soar thanks to ill-advised and what I personally think are puerile tariffs. I mean, I'm lucky. I have a reasonably low interest rate on my mortgage, but just this week we got an unsolicited email from Redfin suggesting we could rent out our home for nearly 1.5 times what our mortgage is. And I'm in a rural area with low housing demand. Both of the team members who at this channel rent pay nearly as much for their tiny apartments as I pay for a 2,000 square foot home on 1/3 of an acre in the country. Paying for a roof comes before paying for a car. Secondly, the automotive industry has pretty much turned the notion of affordable new cars into an oxymoron, especially in the US and Canada. Sure, EV sales are continuing to rise in many parts of the world, and even in the US, there's a steady, inexorable rise in the number of people dumping the pump. But in a world of increasingly uncertain economic futures, more and more people are keeping their cars for longer between sales, which means a slower vehicle turnover for the auto industry. If we add to that the fact that more millennials and Gen Alphas are completely foregoing car ownership far more than the generations before them, and it's clear to see the auto industry is heading into a difficult time. It's one reason why automakers are trying to bleed existing customers dry on all those add-in features like subscription services. They want that money. They want that pound of flesh somehow, even if they're not getting it from traditional sales methods. Third, how do I put this? Journalists have been superseded, replaced by influencers, at least as far as automakers or their PR firms are concerned. Journalists, the good ones at least, are focused on the facts of a situation. If they are invited on a press launch, they will ask all kinds of questions, many of them awkward, to get the very best information they can and to provide the very best, most accurate story to their audience. If something isn't working right, they will say so. If the car breaks down during a review, they'll mention it. Or they'll do what we do and reschedule the review if they can. And if you're wondering why we've had the Fiat 500e on loan twice now but haven't actually finished a review, it's because this particular vehicle we've had on loan, the same car on both occasions, keeps throwing error codes on charge completion here at the house that have required us to hand the car back to be diagnosed. When, or if, we are given the car for a third time, and it actually works as intended long enough for us to review it, we will of course also note that in our review. Not so long ago, most automakers had in-house press teams and in-house events teams who knew all of the journalists who covered the beat and had reasonably good relationships with them. It was reasonably easy to get hold of them if you had a question. They were quick and courteous in their replies, knew their products really well, and they understood that dealing with breaking news stories quickly reflected well on the brand. Today, automakers' PR teams are more tuned to dealing with influencers. You can, as a company, buy an influencer's time, and you can get them to sign a non-disclosure contract and then get them to sign an agreement that says they won't cover any rivals' products for a set period of time. You can, as a company, request to see the output of an influencer's videos before they're posted. You can more readily and more easily feed them lines and specs. And to be clear, while not all influencers are in this category, you can also fudge things more effectively. You are, after all, as a company, engaging an influencer, exchanging money for that influence. It is, in effect, a business transaction, an advert for your brand. But because many influencers give off the vibe of being small operators and just being another person on the street, it's far easier to paint a more favourable picture that people will listen to than you might get from a journalist. And if you add a journalist to the mix, and inevitably people will complain and accuse folks of ulterior motives if what the journalist reports isn't in line with what the person consuming the report wants to hear, because we're so used to influencers. And if you're even, for a moment, confused about the difference between the two, consider that once I was invited to a launch event in Japan by Nissan, not by its US press team, but by an external agency that was engaging influencers on behalf of the US company. That agency invited me because of this YouTube channel, and it didn't realise that we consider ourselves a journalistic outlet. It wasn't until someone tried to get me to sign a non-disclosure and non-compete contract that I realised what was actually going on, and thankfully a quick call to Nissan's press team solved the issue. Since the flight had already been booked, I was allowed to go on the trip and be treated as a journalist with absolutely no contract signed, and I was allowed to cover the event in my usual way. That said, I suspect the nice fancy flight out with a lie flat bed may have been the influencer package rather than the regular cabin seat that I normally end up with on journalist invited trips. Simply put, influencers are, generally, a safer bet, a better investment for automakers wanting to spend on a limited budget for promoting a car. And when it comes to larger companies with larger teams, be they journalists or influencers, there's a lot of pressure to make every dime count. As a tangential thought, one that I don't think directly applies to the closure of these 3 sites, it's worth noting that this is an industry-wide problem. You just have to listen to some of the Donut Media team talk about how things went downhill for them. And reading between the lines, it's clear to see how both brands and bosses looking for a return on their investment attach themselves to the creative process to essentially diminish what was otherwise a fun company for the hosts. I'm sorry for my terrible Latin, but vendite ante omnia? If we combine all of the above with the fact that advertising is everything these days, I mean, streaming services now force you to watch ads even if you've purchased their service, and companies like YouTube are now forcing people to sign in before watching content so that they can specifically profile you and make sure that you're a real human so they can advertise to you while entering into the enshittification area of the world. Alternative facts, alternative advertising, and paying to play has become the norm. And journalists? They are inconvenient. Because they say the things that companies and powerful sorts, and some influencers, don't want you or won't say. Just today, as I was writing this script, I heard from a PR agency working for an automaker client that we cover wanting us to write an advertorial and make a video extolling the virtues of their clients' EVs as an alternative to a certain other brand of unpopular EV that we're not really covering much right now. And we said no, because while the $3,000 to $5,000 they were offering us, which, by the way, is many times more than we get in YouTube ad revenue each month these days, it would have meant we would have lost all of our editorial impartiality. And we can say no because we're a small company whose owner also happens to be the main presenter. But larger entities with bills to pay and shareholders, investors, or a need to balance the sheets to satisfy things may have a much harder time turning such advertorials down. And thankfully, we have a bunch of Patreon supporters who support us every month and allow us to say no to these kind of advances. I don't know what sites do or don't do these, but I know that if we are getting pitches from companies like that, so too are other outlets. And I sometimes see what other folks, very often influencers reply to such emails when someone slips up and does the equivalent of including Jeffrey Goldberg in a Signal chat on what we personally believe is very patently illegal action. It's no secret that we've seen a massive increase in spam and hate of late on this channel, primarily because we are not bending the knee to one particular car company and its CEO. A poll in Germany was recently voided by the site running it because of bot-related activity that suddenly appeared after said CEO complained about the poll on their social media network. And frankly, these days, if you're not saying what a company wants, you are the enemy. And that speaks as much to changes in our global psyche as it does to anything else. So, what can you do? Where do we go from here? Well, the first thing to do is to support outlets and channels that try to stick with traditional journalistic values. And look, hand on heart, I know not everyone who watches us thinks we do that. But there are plenty of other channels out there who I think do, and supporting whomever you choose with monthly contributions means that they can do what they feel is important without needing to work with a large company whose owners may or may not have ulterior motives. And that follows through with other non-automotive journalist types too. If you don't like how a legacy media firm is, for example, covering the illegal war in Ukraine or the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims in China or the criminal actions of Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip right now, find journalists who are speaking truth to power, asking tough questions, and most importantly, are able to speak authentically and honestly, and support them. As for the 3 sites, I don't want to state categorically why they're closing. I don't think it's my place to, and I'd suggest that is something that those involved may or may not be able to talk publicly about. And I don't know for sure if the content I and other contributors have made will survive over the years through their closure. But in that vein, I do want to make a commitment here and now to something on this channel. Something I can absolutely talk to. If you wonder what the future holds for this channel, for us, I can't tell you. The violent vitriol and attacks that we've been having have grown of late from people, especially in a politically charged world. And while it would be incredibly easy for us to become influencers or content creators that are pay for play, that is not how we here at the channel roll. That's not the future we want. I can't tell you how long we'll keep this channel going, or how long we'll keep going if legislative threats to diminish the freedom of the press are followed through on. Nor, in fact, whether we will be able to remain open if some of the worst of the anti-transgender laws are passed. There are laws that are being presented right now that would make it illegal for us to speak openly and honestly on screen about anything, or in fact, even exist safely in much of the US. Some of our most pathetic trolls have already tried to get us in trouble with various authorities and regularly claim nonsensical things about us to try and scare us into silence and scare us off this channel. But whatever happens, as long as we are able to, we are going to keep our content up and available. And if there is a day in the future, whether that is in the near future or the far distant future, where we are no longer making content or our site closes, I want to promise that we are going to do our utmost to ensure the stuff we've made thus far remains accessible and available, whether that is through BitTorrent, PeerTube, or some other form, whatever it takes. Why? Because our internet is a living being, and history exists in the present for the future. When my late sister Susan died of breast cancer in 2018, her blog and her YouTube channel She made content on both her experiences as a deaf person and also as a deaf priest in the Church of England. Her content was inadvertently deleted online as part of her estate being handled. And while I didn't share her religious beliefs, she and I were very close. She was an amazing ally on all kinds of things. And I thought what she had to say was both important and impactful for the world. And I personally feel that when her content was removed, we, collectively, lost something important. I think what we've made here at the channel over the years is also important, and regardless of what we do moving forwards, I hope it can continue on long after we are no longer making it. But, as I said, we're not going anywhere right now. And if you want to make sure we can keep going, well, I'll tell you in the end credits how you can do that, which are coming in a moment. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone who helped me during my time at GreenCarReports. The entire team who helped turn this awkward, classic car-loving, electric vehicle-made musician become a better person. Thank you to John in particular, who, although he left the site not so long after I did, made the biggest impact onto my journalistic endeavours. You have helped me become a better journalist, a better content creator, and you instilled into me all of the things that I use every single day here at this channel when we make content. Without you and the rest of the team, I don't think I'd be making the content I make today. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for watching. Journalism is under a lot of pressure, but there are folks out there who are still working to ensure we get the facts and the honesty we need. And yes, to paraphrase a famous, often misquoted statement, the job of a journalist isn't to report that one person says it's raining and one person says it's snowing. The job of a journalist is to look out the window and figure out who is telling the truth. So I hope you all continue to support folks who continue reporting with that in mind. Oh, and if you're watching this before April 1st, drop by GreenCarReports, MotorAuthority, or The Car Connection and tell them thanks for everything they've done. Thanks for joining us today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord room, on our Patreon page, down below, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are part of the massive community of supporters who make this channel possible, helping us through Patreon and YouTube, helping us cover our bills, pay our team, and ensure that we remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. We've got options across a wide range of different price points from just $1.50 US per month. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Dan Fitzsimmons, Yanni Mavro-Philippos, MB, Bruce McKean, Nitmir, Calvin Klein, Marek Kowalski, Dave Nelson, Chip Chandler, Ed Zavada, Alan Bassel, Tully, Ronald Blackman, Christian Ranson, Michelle Brennan, Scott Weber, Dal Same, Bob, Harry Lamb, Jeff Curtis, William Radke, SDS, Barry T, Shitkrat Chowdhury, Ernest Bruce, Matthew, Bill, and Sphinx Garden. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame, and you can even gift membership to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at for the time being, address listed below. You'll also find links to our swag store, and if you have someone who shops on Amazon, please consider asking them to use our affiliate link so we get the commission rather than Jeff Bezos. So we can continue to focus on making our content even better and reduce creator burnout. We are being a little freer with our release days, but we plan on dropping new content every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday on our main channel, plus something on Sunday over on Transport Evolved Take 2. If you want more, the mighty algorithm that hates us thinks you should be watching this video, but this video is one that we think you should check out. Be awesome, be kind, be intentional, and don't forget to resist. Keep evolving!